listening to Clarity on Fire, a podcast for people who know what they don't want out of their life and career, but aren't sure what they'd rather be doing.
In a world where it's easy to exist, but hard to feel alive, we, Kristen
and Rachel,
two certified life and career coaches, are here to help you cut through the information overload, get unstuck, and focus not just on how you can have a career you're passionate about, but how to create a whole life that feels fulfilling.
So join us here, where we serve up inspiration and down-to-earth wisdom in a way that only two best friends can.
We want you to experience the relief of knowing that, yes, you're allowed to want more out of your life and career.
And no, you don't have to wander through the dark anymore. Our job is to light the fire that shows you the way. Let's go.
Oh, did you miss us? We're back.
We missed you.
Yep.
Happy New Year, too. It's been a while.
2023. You know how I feel about odd years.
I know how you feel about New Year's in general. Kind of how you feel about most holidays.
Oh, I ignore it and I sleep and then I wake up and it's over.
Well, oh, man. And we won't regale you with too many stories about what we've been doing over the past few months. I don't even know what we have been doing.
I don't know that we have a lot of stories about what we've been doing over the past couple months.
I did get COVID, so if I need to cough and can't mute myself fast enough, then I'm sorry to all of you in advance, because that's just lingering, but here we are.
It's the holiday season. You got COVID again.
I'm making it an annual holiday tradition. Every December.
Well, I should acknowledge that the day that we went on hiatus was the day Taylor Swift Midnights came out. And so that was a big deal. And I spent a lot of the last hiatus just listening to that.
How many times do you think you've listened to that full album?
The limit does not exist. And I'm going to see her on tour. I was one of the lucky people who ended up with a ticket in the very, very, very last row of the entire stadium.
It's amazing you even got one, though. The mad rush, the breaking of the internet that occurred during ticket purchasing. I mean,
shout out!
You are one of the lucky ones.
Yeah, shout out to my friend Katie Beth, who stayed in that queue for 6 hours and managed to grab tickets in the, ass end of the stadium. But I'm going to be in the room, and that's all that matters. So that's a highlight. And anyway, we have a lot of Dear Kracheling to do today. So we're back. We've got things to say. And I want to remind you guys, no, I'm only telling you this for the first time. Announce, alert, that we will be doing another round of taking on coaching clients, coaching enrollment, whatever you want to call it. We can't decide what to call it, but it's happening. Whether or not it has a name, in 2 weeks, we are going to be opening up doors again to take on clients. We only do this a few times a year. It's 2023. Oh my God, I'm still processing 2019. So if you are too, and you'd maybe like to catch up, then coaching could be a really good way to help you do that.
As usual, we only have a limited number of spots available. So even though we will have the window open where you can apply to work with us one-on-one for, I think, 2 weeks, I don't know how quickly we're going to be filling up. It's a new year. People tend to really want to dig into how they're going to make the changes they want to make in a new year. There's a lot of new energy, new year, new you energy.
I hate that.
In January. Yeah. So, all I'm saying is if you see the email or if you're listening to the podcast the day we open it up, maybe jump on it sooner rather than later if you're really certain.
Yeah. So we'll be reminding you of that, obviously, over the next couple of weeks. But I did want to plant a wee seed because it's not a light decision. It's not like a spur of the moment, whimsical type of decision. It's a one that people have to think about at least a little bit. So put on your thinking caps if you want to. I'm in a weird mood. This is going to be a weird episode.
Welcome back.
Welcome back. Okay, well, let's Dear Krachel. However, if it's a new year and people are like, ooh, a new podcast, and this is the very first time they're ever listening to us, I apologize. I feel like this is not the best introduction, but actually it's it's a
Who
very
are these girls?
authentic and representative introduction. So, hello, I'm Rachel.
I'm Kristen.
We do Dear Krachel every month, and we love getting your questions. So, pro tip, I'm going to need ones for next month. People were slagging during the hiatus. I didn't get a lot of questions when I wasn't asking for them. So, submit a question for next time, and if you're lucky, maybe you'll hear us read it. You can always email us, contact@clarityonfire.com, subject line Dear Krachel, or in the body of every show notes of every episode, there is always a link to Dear Krachel. You can fill out a form on our site. And we love answering your questions about literally anything. Nothing is off limits. Honestly, the more provocative, the better. I would love to answer some provocative questions in 2023.
I feel like we've had some good ones in the past. Some juicy
boring
ones.
too. Just because you think your question is boring doesn't mean I think it's boring. Boring is in the eye of the beholder.
You don't have to make up something provocative.
No, don't make up questions. Truth is usually better than fiction when it comes to this type of stuff. So,
and more helpful.
So, okay. Are you prepared? Kristen, would you like to read the first question? Or would you like me to read so that you don't COVID cough on them?
Yeah, why don't you take the first one?
Okay, great.
Give me a cough break.
Okay. Dear Krachel, I've worked for myself as a yoga teacher and freelancer over the last 8 years. The kind of thing that everyone seems to want nowadays. But I'm feeling that it's time to move on and rejoin a team environment. I have a pretty good idea of what I'd like to do. I'm just so afraid of giving up the lifestyle freedom I've had in this style of work. I'm feeling pulled to have more impact and definitely looking for more financial security, but fearing the idea of losing myself in a different line of work the way I had before in the corporate world. I'm sad and embarrassed that I couldn't ultimately make this work the way I thought it could, and already grieving the loss of the teacher-student relationships I've built. But I'm also burnt out, broke, and ready to grow into something new as long as I feel a purpose in it. Any words of wisdom on making this transition? Your podcast is really wonderful and helpful to me. That is from Naked and Afraid.
Okay. Well, first of all, I want to just acknowledge the fact that even when you know it's time to make a transition, there's going to be grief. There's going to be some sadness. You're going to miss parts of what you're leaving behind, even if you know you're ready for the next thing. That's normal, and you can't avoid that part. Sometimes even when you really, really want to make a change. And this one for Naked and Afraid is a little bit more complicated than that. So give yourself a little bit of space to feel all of the feelings that are going to come up during this transition, because they're gonna eke out one way or the other, and all of them are normal.
Okay. Were you going to say something? I think you were about to say something else. I was looking
but
at
go
something
ahead.
I wanted to say. Okay. I'm just frustrated that people, I understand why. It's totally normal, but I'm sad that people get so sad and embarrassed when something quote unquote doesn't work. It just feels like a very limited perspective on the human experience. And I wish that we would zoom out and maybe, I know it's hard, but maybe just acknowledge I spent 8 years doing something, which must mean I did kind of make it work. Now, it might not have been exactly what I was picturing, but there was success in what I did, or else I wouldn't have done it for that long. And
by the way, almost nothing turns out just the way we pictured it, and it doesn't mean it was a failure.
It's like I was in a relationship for 8 years and then we broke up. I feel like a failure. Why? You managed to be in a relationship with another human for 8 years. That's really impressive. I don't think you have anything to be embarrassed about that you tried something for 8 years and you had an experience. What I want is for people, and I'm like talking to myself as much as I am to you, because I am guilty of this as well. I need to hear this too. I think that we should just give ourselves credit for having experiences, and that be that. Not, was it good? Was it bad? Was it, I don't know why this was the thing that just came to my mind. Was it stinky? Was it fresh? Don't ask. Don't ask why those are the labels. But you know what? Did it stank up the place? Was it fresh as a daisy? Like, can we just throw them all out and be like, I'm proud of myself for having this experience? Because that is what the human existence is. It is a tapestry of experiences that we weave together and we call it a life. And some of them are weird and some of them look successful, sort of in traditional human terms of what success means. It doesn't matter. You're doing it right if you're having like a rich tapestry and an array of experiences.
Yeah, I am not convinced that you didn't make this work, period. I think we need to maybe redefine what working is. I think most people would say, wait a minute, you were a freelancer and you were a yoga instructor for 8 years. Like, that's longer than some people have careers. People have multiple jobs over 8 years, and that's normal. Most people don't even get to an 8-year relationship, maybe in their whole life. So
I certainly haven't ever. Not even close. Oh, well, unless we're talking about with you. I have definitely, you and I are practically almost double that at this point.
I know. But that is rare. So I'm going to call this a success.
Yeah.
Even if it is ending. And you're choosing for it to end because now you want something different.
Yes. I understand that you're like, but I'm broke. And so if it had been successful, I would have made a ton of money. I understand that. That I totally empathize with that. Yes, it would have been awesome had you made $1 million a year from being a yoga instructor. But I think that when you're 85 years old and you're reflecting back on this phase of your life, there is not one part of you that's going to be embarrassed by the fact that you did this. You are not going to remember that you went back. You're not going to remember that you were so broke. You're going to be like, wow, that was a cool thing that I did. That was brave. I did something and I stepped away from the corporate world for so long. A lot of people would never have had the guts to do that. I made so many connections and I learned so much about myself and I learned so much about like humanity. That's what you're going to be saying. So doesn't that mean it kind of was a success in terms of the quality of the experience? Not to gaslight you. I don't think that's gaslighting. That's just reframing.
It's not gaslighting. It's just recognizing that there's a lot that goes into what makes something a success, and making a lot of money is one aspect, but it is not the defining aspect.
It's kind of the most eye roll basic, yeah aspect. Like, yes. It's what the most, unevolved people are going to use to define success always. And of course we need it. We need money. I'm not here to poo-poo money. Obviously, I'm like, hello, sign up for coaching with me because girls got to eat too. But I definitely don't define the quality of my life by that. That's not my top tier measure of success by a long shot, nor do I think it should be any of ours.
Exactly. And I think you mentioned, by you, I mean Naked and Afraid, mentioned that you're really afraid of giving up the lifestyle freedom of the yoga instructing that you've been doing over the past 8 years. And I want to reframe that a little bit as I think you've hit a point where you're ready to exchange one version of freedom for the other. And obviously, ultimately, we want all versions of freedom, but sometimes different phases of life, you have to prioritize one over the other. And the lifestyle freedom that you're describing sounds like you've probably had a lot of time freedom. You've probably had a lot of autonomy over your schedule, when you work, how you work, and that's felt very freeing. But I'm not sensing that, at least at this point, you're feeling a ton of emotional freedom around the kind of work you're doing and how you're doing it. You said, I'm broke, I'm burnt out, I'm ready for something new. So the new thing may require more time or more structured time than you've had when you were working in a way that you had a lot of choice over. But you're craving more of that emotional freedom, more of that, I know where the money is coming from, and I don't have to think about this one aspect of my life that I've been worrying about for years and years now. I can focus on something different. And so in this new phase of your life, you're prioritizing emotional freedom. And that might look like a little bit of a time freedom sacrifice. I'm not even convinced you have to totally give that up. There's a lot of freedom that you can get working in a team environment, like you said, working for somebody else. But it might be a little bit of a rebalancing. And that's okay. At any point, you can say, okay, I'm full up on emotional freedom. I want more of my time back. And you can make a new decision. But right now, what you're craving is emotional freedom. And you're giving that to yourself. And I want you to give yourself a lot of credit for acknowledging that that's what you need right now and taking the steps to make that change, even if it's complicated and a little sad in some ways.
One more thing I want to say about this question is she said she fears the idea of losing herself in a different line of work if she's returning to a more traditional working setting because she had that experience before in the corporate world. Again, if you had been in a relationship for 8 years or something, or you'd been in a relationship a long time ago, you broke up, it's been 8 years since you've been in that relationship. I would say if you're 25 and you go through a breakup and you enter into a new relationship at 33, it's normal to have some sort of fear or nervousness around, oh, I hope I don't lose myself in this relationship. But it's more likely that all of the wisdom you've accrued over the last 8 years is going to mean I'm going to definitely show up differently here. All of the life experience I've just had counts for something. And I'm going to take that with me into this new relationship, and I'm going to be more observant of my patterns. And I'm going to learn from what didn't work in that last one, and I'm going to do it differently now. I have faith, Nikki. I'm just going to call her Nikki. That's possible for you, and that I don't know that that's something you really need to worry about. Okay.
It also might be a good time to check back in and say, what was true about that old corporate working experience that contributed to me feeling like I lost myself in it? And what was true about me back then? First of all, I think you're already going to tell that you are quite different, like Rachel said, but you also might be able to pinpoint some potential red flags in the next place you go to say, maybe I don't want an experience like that one that felt easy to lose myself in. Maybe there were some characteristics about that team or that culture or that industry that I can learn, that's probably not the healthiest for me. I'm going to make a different decision now. So you can do a little bit of reflecting on what was true then, and it doesn't have to be as true now. A little bit of intentionality can make all the difference.
Okay. Are you ready for question number 2?
Let's do it. Dear Krachel, I'd love to hear more about your thoughts and advice around thriver guilt. I'm absolutely a thriver and pretty strongly a people pleaser too. I've lately been looking into professional development. My company will pay for courses, and I love that they nurture this. While I would love to take a course, and will, because we're losing our project manager, so I might need to fill in for a bit, a bunch of uncertainty and guilt keeps coming up. I don't want to waste the company's money and time. I know it's a relatively small one-time cost, but I'm worried I won't like it and it'll start to force me down a career path that I'm not thrilled about. But there isn't really any other path that I'm particularly thrilled about instead. I think partly because as a thriver, I'm afraid of the professional development leading to more responsibility given to me, more time spent working, and less time for myself. Colleagues talk about their career goals and genuinely seem to want to reach certain milestones. I don't want to lie or force myself somewhere I don't fit or seem lazy. So it'd be great to hear advice or stories from clients who have been in similar situations. Thank you. And that is from Laura.
Oh, I have so much to say to Laura. But first, if someone is new to this podcast, because again, new year, new you, and you don't know what a thriver is, it is one of the 4 potential outcomes when you take the passion profile quiz. It's one of the 4 main passion profiles. So if you haven't taken the passion profile quiz, go to clarityonfire.com, take the quiz. It's like 11 questions. It takes 2 minutes. Download your PDF and see what your result is. It helps you pinpoint the intersection between your career and your passion, or in other words, how do I best want to combine these 2 very important things, my desire for purpose and passion and fulfillment in life, with my career? And there is no one right way to do that. There's 4 main ways you can do that, aka 4 profiles. Thriver.
And one of them is a thriver.
One of them is a thriver.
Thrivers are people who are a little bit unique from some of the other profiles because they maybe have some things that they're really passionate about, or maybe they're just passionate about living life in general, but they don't necessarily want to combine their passions with their work. They want work to be work and be enjoyable and low pressure and, fun. But it's a place they clock in and clock out and then go back and do the stuff that they really love and don't have to make money from it, because that would kind of kill the joy. So that's what a thriver is in a very, very high level nutshell. So that is what Laura is talking about. And that's how she resonates, is as a thriver.
However, Laura, you don't have a thriver problem. You have a people pleasing problem. Okay. And you said that I resonate strongly as a people pleaser. Great. That's actually what's the problem here. There are so many thrivers who'd be like, you're going to pay for me to take a class. Cool. I can just not work for a while while I take this class. I don't know. Even if it's like a day-long workshop, they're like, woohoo, I don't have to work today. I can go to this class. I can just like chill and learn something new. That's so fun. Plenty of thrivers would not have this particular issue. This issue is a people pleaser thing. I'm laughing not at you, but I'm just like in empathy with the fact that you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so afraid that my company is going to waste money on me. What if I don't like it? As if I can't think of any example where anyone that I ever know has ever done any sort of professional development or personal development and their company has paid for it. And then their boss was like, but did you like it? And if they say no, they're like, I can't believe we wasted money on you. They don't ask. They don't ask if you liked it.
Or if you say yes, they don't say, well, good, that now you're going to be that for the rest of the time that you're here working for us.
Right.
Nope. They might just say, oh, interesting. What are some things you learned from that? What were some things that interested you? Great. And then they might not even remember to do anything with it, frankly, unless you advocate for taking what you learned in the course and doing something with it. So you are putting a lot of pressure on yourself here. And you're making this feel like it's going to turn into a bigger obligation. And I genuinely do not think that's going to be the reaction.
Yeah.
And you always have the ability to say, hey, I took this course and some of it was interesting, but I didn't really care for this part. And not continue along a career path just because you took one course. Nobody's going to force you to do that. You can always speak up, but this is going to trigger the people pleaser side of you. The thriver side of you sounds perfectly normal to me. You just sound like a very normal thriver. Like, I just want to do my job. I want to do some things I'm interested in, but I don't want a ton of obligation or a ton of responsibility. Great.
This is kind of like you're in college and you've had a few drinks and you like kiss your girlfriend on the lips. And then you spend the next day wondering, what does this mean? Am I lesbian? And I'm like, well, just because, no, not necessarily. I mean, you don't have to question your whole sexuality just because that happened. You don't have to be worried that now you've gone down an irrevocable path of only having sex with women. Like, that's not what that means. Like, we're just catastrophizing really hard. And I understand why that's happening, but pull it back. It can just be a one-time thing that we don't analyze or we just laugh about years later. Like, it doesn't have to be a thing. We don't have to make it a thing.
That thing. I'm just still laughing at that analogy.
Whatever.
It's a good one.
It's what came to mind.
It's memorable and it's true. You don't have to commit to a new career path because you took one course and somebody else paid for it. the only way
that part of the analogy it was not in mine analogy.
Somebody else paid for it.
A guy gave me $20 on a dare to kiss my roommate, and I did it, and now I'm worried that I'm lesbian. Like,
now you really don't need to worry about being a lesbian. Maybe you just needed $20.
Maybe you need to worry about the fact that you're willing to take $20 from your roommate in order to kiss a girl. That's what we need to be more concerned about.
We're spiraling. Oh, man. But truly the only way that taking a course to see if you're interested in something could lead down a new career path that you don't really want to be on is if you don't speak up for yourself. So again, this is going to be recognizing the people pleaser side of you and catching that, and little by little working on advocating for more of what you want, and recognizing most of the time you're not going to get a lot of pushback.
Yeah.
Because if you don't rein in that people pleaser side, that's where an otherwise great thriver job could start to turn into a pressure-filled obligation because you didn't put good boundaries around what you did and didn't want to do. Mm-hmm. Your people pleaser side could ruin a great thriver job.
Yeah.
Because you say yes to too many things and you don't say no when you actually want to say no. And then you do take on too much responsibility. So this is not about overcoming guilt. This is about overcoming people pleasing.
I can just so clearly, I mean, I could be wrong, Laura, but I'm probably somewhere in the ballpark when I say this, okay? I can just so clearly see what you might have experienced when you were a kid, just in this question. Like, I grew up in a household where I was expected to be grateful for everything that was handed to me. And if my parents paid for me to take a dance class or something, then I was expected to have like a wide smile on my face and be bright-eyed and bushy-tailed all the time about it. And if I ever complained about it, then I was told that I was ungrateful for the hard-earned money that they'd spent on that thing. Like, I can just see some of the experiences you might have had that have led you to the point where you think, if someone spends any money on me, I have to like it. And it's a serious commitment. And it means that, like, I can't take it lightly. I'm like, no, you can. You can take professional development lightly. You can take people spending money on you as just like, oh, thanks, that's cool. And then we move on. You can
be grateful.
Yes.
And not turn it into a big responsibility that now you have to follow through on.
Yeah.
Both can be true.
And this, y'all, is why we do coaching. Because whether or not I'm totally right about Laura's predicament, this is a predicament I've seen over and over again in people I've coached. That we take that childhood blueprint and how we relate to people and how we're expected to show up and our fears about what other people are going to think about us. And we just take it right into adulthood and we copy paste it onto everyone we interact with at work. And we're wondering why we're not happy. And unfortunately, we can't just snap our fingers and a perfect new job heals all of the baggage that we're bringing to it from decades of programming. We got to go back and really examine that. Where did that people-pleasing programming come from, and all sorts of other programming?
It might be worth saying, too, that for people who don't know this because maybe they're newer to us or they weren't paying as much attention the last time we offered this program. We do have a program called Getting Over People Pleasing, but it's just not available at the moment. And I don't know when it will ever be available again. I mean, maybe at some point, but it is available to our one-on-one clients who sign up for 6 months of coaching.
Yep. It's very helpful.
So if you know that people pleasing is an issue for you, we have a whole program of how to start working through that. And it goes deep and it's also very actionable. But at this point, it's only accessible to clients. So just putting that out there.
Can we touch like very momentarily on the part where she's like, I don't want to lie, force myself into somewhere I don't fit or seem lazy? Why? Okay. I love truth telling, as you know. Kristen and I don't like lying either. I like people to know exactly what I'm thinking and what I'm feeling. However, there are places where you can embrace not always telling the truth. You don't have to always tell the truth at work. Like, people don't need to know exactly what you're thinking and feeling all of the time at work if sharing it actually becomes a detriment to you. Like, if someone's paying for your professional development and you didn't really like it that much, you can say, yeah, I didn't really like that much. If you think it's going to create a whole friggin' thing with your boss and you don't want to deal with it, you can, I don't care if you lie. You can be like, yeah, it was fine. Actually, I hated it. Whatever. Like, it's okay. You can embrace deceit from time to time. I'm okay with it. I'm giving you permission to white lie if it serves you and doesn't hurt anybody.
And yet, you also don't have to totally pretend, because I think a lot of thrivers think they have to act like they're really, really interested in growing and expanding their repertoire within the company. No. You do not have to go above and beyond and act like this is my favorite part of my whole life is coming to work here at this company. When you're a thriver, that's just never going to be true. But you also don't have to say, I'm just clocking in and clocking out, and it's a paycheck, that. And it's fine. You're allowed to just say, this is fine, and I'm interested in this. And you can kind of play it neutral. There's nothing wrong about that. What I don't want is for you to feel like you have to wear a mask. That's where the quote unquote lying. What we're talking about doesn't even feel like lying to me.
No, to me, that's just
real
like, you don't need to
like,
know everything that I'm thinking and feeling. Like, I'm allowed to have private thoughts.
Yeah, not everybody deserves full access to all of your thoughts and feelings, especially at work. You didn't choose a lot of those people. Like, you chose your family or your friends.
I feel like people pleasers often think that. They often think that it's deceitful for people to not know, like, how they think and feel. And so they think that if they're not being really honest and really forthright all the time, then they're lying. And that's not true either. You're allowed to have like private thoughts that you don't share with other people, or you're allowed to like spin things a little bit. And if that's okay, that's totally fine.
Oh, and by the way, people pleasing is a version of lying.
Yep.
You're usually not being totally truthful and just trying to tell the other person what they want to hear. So if you're a people pleaser, and this is not just for Laura, I'm not just calling you out, Laura. I'm also a lifelong people pleaser in constant recovery. So calling myself out as much as everybody else, people pleasing is white lying all the time.
And not just by what you say, it's often by what you don't do and what you don't say. Mm-hmm. It's by not bringing things up. It's by adjusting your behavior when no one even knows you're doing it to accommodate them. Like, it's deceitful. It might not be lying, but it's kind of deceitful. So, Okay. Laura, I hope you're okay. I feel like we just beat you up a little bit, but it's always from a place of love and care. It's like hitting someone with marshmallows, you know? Like, you're getting hit technically, but it doesn't hurt.
No, it should feel, I hope it feels like a relief in some ways. You can try this thing and you don't have to do anything with it if you don't want to. I hope that feels like a relief.
Yeah. Okay. Question number 3, last question.
Let's do it.
Okay. Hey, Krachel, my boss is the CEO of a small startup that's just getting off the ground. I think he's trying to mentor me, or to put it less nicely, turn me into a miniature version of himself. This is non-consensual and has never been discussed. In fact, there's basically no structure or space for check-ins regarding what I actually want from my position. I had to basically force him to give me an annual review, for example, and it was profoundly unhelpful. I've got some serious fire starter energy, though, and really look forward to working for myself at some point. So I figure, in theory, there is a lot I could learn from this guy if I can just breathe through the frustration. But all I want to do is kick and scream against it. How can I ever learn from my experience as an employee if all I want is to be left alone? And that is from No Man's Protege.
Okay, I'm going to try to temper myself because I feel like I'm picking up on her Firestarter rebellion and it's triggering my Firestarter rebellion. And I just want to be like, telling this guy off, but I'm not sure he deserves it. So I'm going to first, I'm not sure.
The CEOs of small startups are almost always a little bit crazy and a little bit narcissistic. So I'm sure she's not wrong that this is a profoundly annoying at minimum.
Oh, don't get me wrong. Like we're gonna have words about this non-consensual mentoring, but I'm gonna start by trying to give a little bit of the benefit of the doubt here. And I want to pick up on something that you asked, or that you said at the kind of end of the question, which is, I know I could learn from this guy, and he also believes he has things that he could teach you. But something is not aligned here. So one of two things is happening. Either he is sharing or mentoring you in helpful ways that could apply to the kind of business that you want to run one day, which it sounds like that's your ultimate goal. But you are so annoyed by by his personality or by his non-consensual mentoring that you're not really picking up what he's putting down.
In other words, the content is okay. The context of how he's sharing it is so off-putting that she can't absorb the content at all.
The deliverer is the problem.
The delivery is bad. Yes.
Or it could be that he's trying to be helpful and share things that he thinks you would want to learn from him, but those are not the things that you want to learn. And so it's not helpful to you. It's just annoying. And if that is the case, it might behoove you to take a pause and ask yourself, what would I want to learn from this person, however much longer I'm here working with him? And can I explicitly ask for him to teach me those things instead of the things he assumes I want to learn?
If he wasn't annoying, like, take his personality out of the mix for a second. Is there anything that I would actually be interested in knowing? Okay, let's do that first. If the answer is actually no, or you have to kind of like contrive it and you're not that enthused, okay, then that's kind of your answer is, I don't really need mentoring from this dude. I think I'm just going to avoid this as much as possible. If it's, no, there actually are things I want to learn, then what we might need to do is help you craft a way to ask for that and try to overcome this whole, try to make it more consensual, which may or may not be possible based on this dude's personality. He's probably a fire starter too. He's probably got, more confidence than he by rights should have. If I'm like doing a stereotype of this type of person, he probably has more confidence than he deserves to have. And he might not, he might not respond, but you're not going to find out if you don't push back, right?
Exactly. So if you haven't asked to learn what you really want to learn, then that should be step one. If you have, because I know you've asked for other things like more regular check-ins and annual review, and that didn't really go anywhere. So if you have tried to explicitly say, hey, I'd really like to learn this from you, or can you show me how you did this, or give specifics, and it's falling on deaf ears, then at some point, this might be one of those stop going to the hardware store for milk situations, which is an old blog, maybe a podcast episode, I can't remember, that we did, where it's like, stop going to people trying to get things that those people are never going to be able to give you. Now, you can give them a chance. You can clearly ask for what you want to need and give them a chance to give that to you. But some people are not going to be able to give you what you want. Like, they just don't have that capacity, or they don't have the willingness, or both. And at some point, you might have to say, I want to learn certain things and I could learn them from him, but he's just not the right person. And if you are a fire starter, you are not going to be able to force yourself to learn things you don't want to learn, or from people you don't want to learn from. You're just too rebellious by nature. And so it's okay to say, technically, I could learn things from him, but I would much rather learn them from this other person, or from this course, or from my own experience.
Or from other people who work at this company, right? Like, he's not the only person there you could learn from, I'm sure.
And if you are more motivated to learn from a different source, if you're that much of a fire starter, I have no doubt you're going to do it. So don't force yourself to learn the things you want to learn in a way you don't want to learn them, because I guarantee you will rebel against it. It is in your nature.
If nothing else, you're going to learn
and don't fight it.
You're going to learn what not to do by observing this guy. And that's honestly probably more helpful sometimes than learning what to do, is learning what to avoid. Okay, so if you want to try to have a conversation with this dude and make this a little more consensual, what I would start with is acknowledge that he is trying to be helpful. Start by saying something like, hey, I see that you're making an effort to mentor me, and that's cool. Like, that effort is appreciated, not the content so much, maybe the effort or the acknowledgement of me, or wanting to, seeing my potential, whatever, like, that's cool. I appreciate that you see my potential. And I'm going to give you a word to the wise on how to best reach me as an employee. You want to learn how to be a better leader? Cool. One of the ways is learn how to connect and learn what works for each of your employees and learn how to speak their language. Here's what would really help me. Here's what would work for me. Here's what is probably not going to work so well for me. Like, give him a cheat sheet on how you operate. He might take it, crumple it up, laugh, throw it away. But there's a chance that might sink in somewhere, and you might get a little more receptivity, or it might be slightly less annoying if he learns, here's what works for how to communicate with me and what I'm really looking for out of this relationship, and here's what doesn't. If you don't ask, if you don't say that, you're just going to keep getting exactly what you're currently getting, which is him forcing what he thinks are like good ideas onto you and like helpful shit onto you that you don't want. You got to try.
And lastly, I just want to directly answer that last question that she asked, which is, how can I ever learn from my experience as an employee if all I want is to be left alone? I don't actually believe all you want is to be left alone. I think you are just frustrated and misaligned. There are things that you could learn from being an employee. I think, like Rachel said, if we can clarify what those are and you can ask for them clearly, you might get remotivated to eke out as much as you can for the time that you're here. But also recognize, if you really decide at some point that this person is not who you want to learn from, you can just decide to be left alone, essentially. You can say, thank you for your mentoring, but I'm good. And seek out other teachers. And that might mean going to work for other teachers, or it might mean keeping this job, maybe acting like a thriver for a little while and throwing your fire starter energy into something else that's really exciting until you can do that full time.
Also, keep in mind that I'm not sure fire starters need employee experiences to learn anything. Like, even if you didn't have this experience, I think you'd have just as much energy and motivation and all of that you need in order to create something later. You don't actually need this experience.
Unless you want to know what it feels like to be one of your future employees.
I'm not saying all experiences are helpful, right? To circle back, all experiences weave into the tapestry of life. There is no such thing as a good or a bad experience. It's all just an experience. And the more we can just allow it to be instead of label what it is or isn't, the more we ride the waves of life, et cetera, and the easier it gets. But fire starters in particular do not need a ton of experiences as an employee to refine what they want or to give them enough information or energy to create something. You already have all of that within you. This is just maybe gravy, or just helping you discern a little bit clearer. This is not a make or break experience you're having right now.
Frankly, sometimes for a fire starter, the greatest value they get out of being an employee is the motivation to stop being an employee and go figure out how to create their own thing.
Who will not stop bothering you, and he bothers you right out of the job, and then you create your own job. Like, that might be his most valuable asset to you.
Let him be fuel. Doesn't have to be a mentor.
I've said this
Can
many
be
a time
fuel.
on the podcast before, but it's exactly what Rebel Wilson says in Pitch Perfect when those guys throw burritos at them and they find a little bit of burrito behind her ear and she just says, "Leave it. It fuels my hate fire."
Still my favorite line from that movie.
So let it fuel your hate fire.
Okay. Well, as always, we love to hear responses from our question askers. But I also know that these questions did not just apply to these three people. So if you resonated with anything we talked about here, please leave us a comment and we'll have a link to where this episode lives on our site in the show notes. And also don't forget, ask us a question. If this sparked a question for you, every single episode of our entire podcast has a link to go ask us a Dear Krachel question. So throw the question into the form on that page, and we might choose you for next month.
Okay, well, it's good to be back. We will be back next week with a new interview with a normal person, which at the time I'm recording this, I haven't actually done. So I can't tell you exactly what it's going to be about, but I can tell you what I think it's going to be about, which is about one of my former clients getting her groove back, which is a good thing to talk about when you're starting off January. A month that really should not be the start of a year because it is the least groovy month, I personally think.
Yes, let's start the new year in the dead of winter, the shortest days, and the time everyone wants to hibernate.
Well, the pagans
I don't
started
get it,
New Year at
here we
like
are.
Easter or what? Well, not Easter, but at the spring equinox, and I think that makes way more sense. So, anyway, whatever. We can try to get our groove back
In
this
favor
month,
of
and
that.
we will next Friday when I interview my former client Kim. So come back for that and be thinking about whether or not you want to do some one-on-one coaching with us. Do you want to spend many, many months with either Rachel or Kristen getting to the root of what the heck is getting in your way? So many different things might be getting in your way. And you know some of them. I guarantee you are not aware of a lot of them. And if you would like to become aware and then do something about it and then experience freedom, that's what we do.
Welcome. It's a clarity verse if that's what you want.
Where bad analogies and mixed metaphors thrive. And but we really do help people somehow amidst all of them. In spite of them, people are helped. Okay.
Oh, all right. Well, we are back to our regularly scheduled programming, and we will see you next week. Bye.